Thank you for tuning in to LA Talk Live, reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we're more than just talk. Stay tuned.
Hi, and welcome to the Book Beat. I'm Jean Noel Bassior, and this is the show where we feature authors talking about their latest books and guest experts in the world of writing and publishing. And also, this is the show with homework. What we want you to do is to go out and try to find a good book to read yourself this week, and if you can't find it, start thinking about writing the book that you want to read yourself. Because especially in this brave new world of self-publishing, that is totally possible. Of course, the thing is you want to have a good book. And so that's why we interview experts on this show that will kind of walk you through the writing process, the publishing process. And our first guest today is going to tell us what happens when you actually have finished the book, and now you have to turn your thoughts toward book promotion, which is a whole other subject, and can be a full-time job, actually, as those of you who have written books probably know. And later on, we're going to be joined in studio by Ray Ybarra, and he is author of the upcoming multimedia book, Conversations with Shark Tank Winners. That's based on the TV show Shark Tank. Our engineer is smiling. Are you a fan of that show? Oh, great. Okay, good. And Stephen Johnson will be joining us in the final segment, and he is author of The Sacred Path, The Way of the Spiritual Warrior, A Journey to Mindful Manhood. So he'll be joining us, and I interviewed Sam Keane a long time ago. This brings back memories of that. So, is Kim on the phone, by the way? Great. Kim, are you there?
Yes.
Great. I wanted to give you a few extra minutes because not only are you a book publicist and senior media manager at New World Library, but I was looking you up on the web, and I also got fascinated with your website, skip.com.
iskip.com, yes.
iskip.com, yeah. So hopefully after we give some tips to writers about, kind of unravel the whole book promotion thing, we can talk about that a little bit if you like.
Okay.
So
sounds good.
Kim is a senior book publicist and the social media manager at New World Library, which is a wonderful traditional publisher up in San Rafael, right? Northern California?
Nevada. We're a little bit north of San Rafael.
Okay, Nevada. Okay, great. But in Northern California. And Kim entered the publishing industry when her father hired her to promote his self-published book about job searching. And her passion for the project inspired her to learn the ins and outs of self-publishing from the ground up. And then you got a job as actually at a traditional publishing house, right, in San Francisco?
I did. When I moved to San Francisco from Indiana, I was hired as a publicity assistant at Josie Bass.
Right, and then you were promoted to publicity director, right?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah, then went freelance for a while so you could get your skipping message, adult skipping message out there. And then you, as you say in your bio, you skipped on to serve as the program director of San Francisco's Learning Annex, which is impressive. And then you were hired by New World Library. And you've been there for about, 8 or 9 years, right?
Yeah, I've been there for 8 wonderful years. It's a great company.
It is a great company. Tell us a little about New World Library. And also, the thing that I hear from authors so much, whether they're self-published or they want to go after traditional publisher, is they always think that if they get with a traditional publisher, like they're going to get this amazing publicity campaign, like the 20 city talk show tour, and all of that.
Yeah.
Right. And I kind of have to say, and I'm going to let you explain this, but, to kind of calm them down, I say, well, probably what's going to happen is you're going to get assigned a publicist who's really going to do their best for you for a couple of weeks. And I know that New World Library goes beyond this, and that's why you guys are different. But at a lot of publishers, that's kind of what happens. And then guess what? You're sort of on your own. Is that kind of true, or?
It is, yeah. especially with the way the world has changed and the way the book publishing world has changed, that's true now more than ever, just because it used to be that we would send an author to a city and there would be the opportunity for a newspaper interview and, a couple different morning shows that were produced locally and lots of radio. And with all the consolidation that's happened, there's just not that much opportunity anymore, and so much can be done virtually that really the days of the 6 or 10 or 30 city tours have really become a thing of the past, just generally speaking. And with larger publishers, they may do the big cities for the big authors, but for people who are new, it's really either going to be a partnership with your publicist or something that you're going to have to do yourself.
Right. And so what is the role of a publicist? Like, what's your role at a traditional publishing house?
Well, first I would say New World Library I wouldn't necessarily call 100% traditional.
That's true.
You asked about just a little bit about the company.
Yeah.
It was founded 35 years ago by Mark Allen and Shakti Gawain, who wrote the book Creative Visualization, which is what started it all.
Yes,
and,
pioneering book.
Yes, very pioneering, and really New York Library is not traditional just in the fact that they so walk their talk as far as what we're publishing and really treat all of their employees, as a generous profit-sharing plan and really want to give back to their employees and the community and the world around them. So it's a really fantastic company. And then, I'm sorry, what was you were?
And I just want to
kind of the process.
I just want to say that I do know that to be true what you said, and so it's not like you're just plugging the company that you work at, because I did work with New World Library when I was doing celebrity interviews for years, and I worked with Marjorie Conte, who as you know was there before you, and she said it was like a family. In fact, in those days, everybody used to kind of read the manuscripts that came in. I don't know if it's still like that. But and I noticed that we had one of your authors on our show, and I couldn't believe the publicity that you guys were really attempting to give her. Like, you were going beyond what most publishers do. So what I asked you was sort of like, what is your job really? What do you do for authors, and how can they partner with you to kind of help you out?
Well, basically my job is to get any kind of media coverage, whether that's more traditional media like radio, television, book reviews, newspaper coverage, magazines, things like that, or increasingly social media and we do a lot of work with blog tours and connecting with a lot of individual bloggers, so maybe a lot more contacts than before, but that have a smaller but more dedicated audience. And as far as authors partnering, it really is a partnership. And so much of it has to do with really having a kind of authors being responsible for themselves with building a social media network and platform that can help spread the word when things happen is really the best way that people, whether they have a book now or they're creating one, can really help the process is to be proactive and to develop an email list and to kind of really dive into the kind of social media technological world that's emerging so quickly, because this really seems to be a big key these days.
Right. And so I have a question about that. Like, I know that because of the way the industry has changed, I know that there are even some literary agents, in fact, many, many more these days, who almost require an author to have a pretty huge platform in terms of their Twitter followers and their Facebook followers. What does New World Library, do they kind of ask authors to have that? Or what if an author comes to you with just an incredible book that you fall in love with, but they're not that great at social media and they don't have thousands of followers?
Well, the book and the editorial content really leads everything. So if there's a book that comes across, like when The Power of Now came across our publisher's desk, he knew immediately that it was something that he was going to publish, and that's since become our best-selling title and continues to sell amazingly well. So it's not like if you don't have that it won't work. But just with the reality of how things are today, it's really a requirement almost, generally speaking, to have some kind of way that you are going to partner with the publisher to help sell the book, whether that's through speaking engagements or which doesn't necessarily have to be traditional either. Like everything's kind of like there's new rules. Like some of our authors are doing living room tours where they go from city to city, and people within their community will support them for small group events where people buy books, and that's how they do their speaking engagement.
Wow. So now, are they financing? Are they financing that themselves, or are people kind of pitching in to bring them to these different cities?
It depends. With that kind of thing, usually they'll have the book be part of the, like, in order to come, you buy a copy of the book and that kind of thing. But usually these days, with just the way things are in the different markets, we suggest that, if something else is taking an author to a city, like if they're going to be speaking at a conference or something like that, then we'll fill in with other things. Otherwise, you can really do so much virtually that it's just not worth the cost and involved to do an actual visiting a city.
So that's like, so tell me what you do for authors. Like, let's say someone's just had their book published, and then what's the first thing that you do for them?
Well, we usually have a marketing conversation just to kind of figure out what all they have going on and to make a strategy and a plan. And then it starts about 4 to 5 months before publication. We produce something that's called a bound galley, which is an advanced copy of the book. And we use that to approach magazines. It was like the larger, like, women's magazines and psychology magazines and that kind of thing, because those publications work on such a long lead time that right now, if you want to get something in their January issue, you better be presenting it to them. So you have to be really ahead of the curve with those folks. So that's how it starts. And then also setting up any events, bookstore events. Again, that's changed dramatically, especially with the closing of borders, and there's just not as many bookstores, and people don't necessarily go out to bookstores as much. So depending on the market, we'll set up events. And then once we get finished books, that's when we use that to approach the media that works on a shorter lead time, like radio shows, television in their local market, blogs, and blog tours. I think blog tours is just kind of the most exciting thing that's happening right now as far as
tell us what a blog tour is.
Well, there's a few different ways that people do it. I generally like to keep it as simple as possible. So basically we'll reach out. I'm working on a book right now called Grace Under Pressure. That's the story of a mom that has a daughter with Asperger's and how she started running marathons to help her go the distance for her daughter. It's really inspiring. And so there's a lot of women and mommy bloggers and autism bloggers. And so I reached out to all of them before we got the book, and I said, hey, I'm putting together this blog tour. Here's what the book's about. When we get finished books, we'll send you a free copy if you commit to doing either a review or a mention or an excerpt or run a guest post from the author between these windows of time, this window of time. So, and it's usually about 2 weeks that I try and get everything happening at one point to create buzz online. And then once they get the book, then I'll send just supporting information that has the Q&A with the authors that they can pick from, some different guest posts, excerpts from the book, and that sort of thing. And then my job becomes kind of herding bloggers, like just trying to get them all. And usually most of them do it, when they agreed amount of time, but sometimes it falls out of that, but you're just generally trying to get as much going in as small a window as you can.
Herding bloggers is a great image, by the way. Yeah. It might be a potential book title too.
It could be more challenging than herding cats.
And maybe the title of your next book as well.
Yeah.
So I wonder about AM radio, because I know that we see fewer and fewer authors, like you were saying about major media. And when you were talking about consolidation, it's true that a lot of just like bookstores are disappearing, a lot of independent radio outlets are disappearing, being bought up by big companies. So do you still find that you are booking authors on, say, AM radio shows or local TV shows, or is it pretty much internet television and radio? Or
Well, it's definitely pretty amazing how the online radio world is growing. Like that's exciting, and it has a tendency, depending on the show, to maybe be, again, a smaller but more targeted audience. So it's a little bit more work because there's more shows and kind of they aren't in it necessarily always for the long haul, so you have to keep really good records for your database. But there's still quite a few of traditional radio shows, and we have a database of people that we work with quite a bit that like to cover our material. So when we get a new book, we'll send out to them, and usually do pretty well getting some interviews. But it's definitely a changing world, and you just never know how long the station's going to be there and that kind of thing.
Right, and I've seen publicists who are really struggling with this change, as I'm sure you have, still trying to make it fly the traditional way. And it's like this is a virtual world now, isn't it?
Yes, it really is. And you got to adapt.
Yeah.
Evolve and adapt and try and have fun with it as much as you can.
Now,
not get discouraged.
Exactly. And one interesting question that you submitted here is you said, one thing you wish all first-time authors knew about what you do for them, what would that be?
I think it would just be the sheer amount, the energy and the amount of contacts and everything that a publicist is doing, and how challenging it can be to get to yes. And that in today's world, that really, the best answer an author can give is yes. Like sometimes authors will be like, oh, I don't want to do that show, it's too small, or that kind of thing. And it's really, in today's world, it's just as much as you can connect and get yourself out there, the better.
Yeah, that's great advice, because I remember a long time ago when I got like a sales job, like in high school or something, I remember the guy saying to me, the answer is always yes.
Yeah.
They say, can you...
I'd love it if I could just have that be with all my authors.
Yeah, I mean,
yes,
I was selling...
Yes, thank you.
Exactly, I was selling advertising. It's like, well, can you do this for me? Yes, of course. Can you place it here? Yeah, right, upper right-hand corner of the page? Yes, of course. Run it every day for 10 years? Yes, so it was like... So, I do want to get to iskip.com in a minute, but the minute we have left. But I also wonder, what would be your best advice for an author just starting out who can't afford to hire a publicist, to supplement their work? What can they do proactively on their own?
Well, you really can do quite a bit these days. I think the blog world is a great connection point. I would suggest creating, first of all, good press materials about your book, which would be like a pitch letter that describes it, maybe offer some story ideas that relate to it, and a press release, and then some sample questions with answers written out, so you have a nice Q&A that really makes it easy for bloggers or traditional media or whoever you're pitching to use the material, like you kind of do their work for them, and then if they get it and they're swamped, they're like, oh, I could just use this. Mm-hmm. And then really researching who you're sending to and finding folks that are a good fit. There's so many niches out there, and it's just a matter of really connecting with and finding, whether it's a Facebook group or blogs and that sort of thing. And then being persistent and just knowing that part of this process and part of publicizing, whether it's someone else's book or your own book, is hearing no and not being frustrated and just continuing to put it out there and trusting that the right people connect with it as you do that.
Right.
Sometimes can be challenging.
Yes, learning to handle rejection, which is,
yes,
part of being a publicist. I know that a special skill you've developed. Let's talk about your iskip.com. And the reason that fascinates me is because I've always known that skipping makes me feel wonderful. But when you're an adult, you're not supposed to skip, right?
Well, yeah, my website is iskip.com. I've been doing this for 14 years. And the first time I skipped as an adult, I had this vision. Like, I hadn't skipped since I was a kid at all. And as I did it, I thought, oh my gosh, so much fun. I'm never going to be a runner still, even though I'm in good shape now. Running is so hard on my body. But when I skip, it's so joyful and light and buoyant and easier on my body than running and fun. So I thought, I'm going to see if I can start a skipping movement. And it completely not only worked, but took me for this tremendous national media ride back in 99, 2000, where I was in People and Time and Newsweek and skipped with Donny Osmond and all of these things. But it really goes, and in my community in San Francisco, or in California, it's not as unusual. But a lot of times, people think I'm absolutely crazy. And to me, like, our world needs joy and positive energy now more than ever. And I'm over letting the fear of judgment of negative people impact how I live my life. And so that's kind of the overall message and theme, whether people actually want to skip or not. And that's the part that's most important for me in promoting that as my passion.
Well,
in
I
addition
skip.
to what I do for my work.
Yeah, iskip.com. I mean, because, if you go skipping down the street, I mean, they're either going to take you away or, you're going to get some weird stares,
well, we
right?
think that, but it's not really true, actually. If you're a walker and every time you skip, you burn twice as many calories as when you walk. So if you're a walker and you're out for a walk sometime, it's very liberating to actually skip 20 steps. And really, if you do it and you pass someone, we think that, like, that's what because our culture has this big belief, but it's actually not true.
Well, thank you so much, Kim.
Most people are positive.
I wish we could talk more about this, but I hear the music. Thank you so much. And your newworldlibrary.com, is that the website?
Yes. That's
Great.
Right.
Thank you so much for shedding some light on this whole book promotion, publicity, thing for writers, and we really appreciate your being on this show with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Stay tuned for Ray Ibarra is coming up. He's going to join us. If you like the reality show Shark Tank, you're going to want to hear what he has to say. He's interviewed a lot of the contestants, so stay tuned. This is the Book Beat.
Hi, this is Elena, inviting you to join me every Wednesday at noon for Elena's Beauty Talk and more, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio, R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Dawn Christie, inviting you to join me every Friday, 1 p.m. Pacific, for my all-new show, The Dawn Christie Show. Join me as I discuss love, spiritual readings, your purpose, why am I born, what am I here to do. So don't forget to tune in, The Dawn Christie Show at 1 p.m. Pacific, exclusively on LA Talk Live. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV. Reality radio, handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, and welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean Noel Bassior. That music, by the way, was composed by my brother, Rick Fleischman.
Cool.
And he has visual music service. He writes for film and TV and he's a music coordinator. Thank you, Rick. So we have with us Ray Ibarra. Am I saying that right?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, great. And he's a talk show host, a contributor to various digital magazines. He's author and producer of an upcoming multimedia book, Conversations with Shark Tank Winners. This is based on the popular ABC TV show, right?
That's correct, yes.
And you're launching tomorrow. Multimedia.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's amazing. And so what you've done is you've gone and interviewed winners, right? Winning contestants or just winning and non-winning contestants?
Both, yes.
Both,
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I saw Shark Tank once. I loved it. If I had more time to watch TV, I'd watch more. But they had these guys. I love coffee, so I happened to catch the segment where these two guys had, like, I don't know if it was like a cell phone that made coffee, or it was like some some new slant on it. That it was like a coffee maker that did something that nothing else could do. So, and they were pitching it to this panel of very wealthy entrepreneurs who could actually make these ideas happen, right? If that's the idea of the show, right?
That's correct, yes.
Right. So how did you get this idea of writing this book? Was it to help entrepreneurs, or what exactly is this book going to do?
Well, it was an inspiration when I was watching Shark Tank, like a lot of people do in this country and around the world. And on a Friday night, I got inspired by watching some of the entrepreneurs. And I was hosting a podcast at the time, New Media Radio Hour podcast. And I had an inspiration when I got up, had my morning cup of coffee Saturday. I was going to call a couple of the entrepreneurs to interview them about their experience. And then I had this light bulb aha experience. And there was a little business card right next to me. I flipped it over and wrote down the title, Shark Tank Effect, How to Get on Shark Tank, something to that effect. So I would remember the title. And then I went on GoDaddy and to see if anybody had Shark Tank Effect taken, and nobody had it.
Yeah, amazing. Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
And usually it's like, Shark Tank Effect, $5,000, right?
Yeah, and nobody had it, so I registered that. And then what took place was that I went to the United States Copyright website to see if anybody had any content similar, and nobody had it.
Oh, amazing.
And so I registered that right away, and then I knew I was onto something. And I called the entrepreneurs and told them I've got this idea for a multimedia book. I called up 14 of them. And I said, would you like to be part of it? And they enthusiastically said yes, and that was the beginning of it all.
Great, great. So tell us about the book. So you interviewed them, and is this about how to get on Shark Tank? Is it beyond that, like their best business tips and the outcome, or what the experience was like for them? What's in the book?
It's all of everything you said and a little more, too. It's about their experiences, what they did before they went on Shark Tank, how they were developing their businesses, how they came
their journey,
their journey,
their business journey.
Exactly, and their ideas, yeah.
So that's really interesting, because if somebody has a small business, how do they get to this national TV show? What was the most interesting story, or one of the most interesting stories you came across?
Wow. Well, first of all, I want to say that's a great question, because all of them were fantastic stories. There was one in particular that stood out, though. That was the most dramatic episode on Shark Tank. And that was Billy Blanks Jr. and his wife, Sharon Catherine Blanks. Billy Blanks Jr., his dad is a world-famous Tybo inventor, creator, Billy Blanks Sr. And he was developing a product, dance certification course, and they were homeless. Through various circumstances. You'll get the inside information if you get the book. And it happened just like it did on that episode, where they turned down the deal. Damon John, one of the sharks, followed them to the back of the room to get them to understand what he was trying to offer them to help them, and they took the deal.
So wait a minute. Now they pitched their, what did they pitch?
Dance It Out, the dance certification program.
Okay, and then they got turned down at first.
No, they made him an offer. Damon John and Mark Cuban made him an offer.
Oh, okay.
And he turned it down. But he didn't quite understand the parameters of the deal, so he turned it down.
Oh, wow.
And then Damon John said, well, I've got to save him from himself. And he went off the stage and went back into the room and got them and explained, I'm going to help you. I want to take you. Just trust me, because I believe in you. And they emotionally took the deal. And I asked them, did that happen exactly as it did on TV? Because, they splice things up and that type of thing.
Right.
And they said, yes, it was exactly how it happened. It wasn't staged. It was like that. And now they're traveling the world.
Wow. Why did he turn it down?
Well, he didn't understand the whole parameters of the economics of it, what they were trying to do and what they were trying to help him with. And somehow he just didn't quite understand what they were offering him. So because he didn't understand it fully, he turned them down.
Was he kind of wary, sort of, like he might be ripped off? Or
not that he was going to be ripped off, but he just didn't understand the whole deal. So he just went ahead and turned it down.
Yeah, that is an amazing story.
Yeah.
Any other, what else kind of struck you as a kind of amazing story?
Well, you had asked me if there's nothing but winners that I interview. I interview both winners who secured secured deals and those that haven't secured deals. But I like to say this, that everybody who goes on that show is a winner because of what that Shark Tank effect does for their businesses. They're never the same after they go on that show. Dan Holtz he invented Liz Lovely Cookies, gluten-free cookie. And he went on with his wife Liz, and they got absolutely torn up and eaten alive by the sharks. I mean, they just got reamed, and it was just. He said that he even has Shark Tank post-traumatic stress syndrome. He can't watch the show anymore. And I'm not kidding you. During our interview, you'll get that in the interview. But he was really traumatized by that.
That's not good.
Yeah, but he got. He was a cancer survivor, and 3 days before their store was going to open in Virginia, Hurricane Irene went through and wiped them all out, and they lost everything. And then they had a $50,000 product recall unfairly by the FDA that set them back and almost put them into bankruptcy.
Now, what kind of product did he have?
Gluten-free cookies.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
But out of going on Shark Tank, even though they got reamed and they didn't get a deal, some of the major food stores like Safeway and other big ones picked them up.
Oh, I see.
And that happens a lot.
Oh, kind of like being on American Idol or something, and then like you come in like 10th, but still, or 3rd, you still could get a recording contract. Sometimes. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why I named the book. The name of the full title of the book is not just Shark Tank Effect, but it's how the Shark Tank Effect dramatically increased sales, exposure, and more for these successful entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm. So, well, it must be interesting how somebody gets the idea, I want to be on Shark Tank. What did people tell you about that? How did they get that vision or that idea? That's a huge step, you know? And plus, it would be scary because you were saying, I haven't watched enough to know this, but you said that they tore this other guy, this last contestant, down. Can they be very vicious and brutal on this show?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely they can.
That's why it's called Shark Tank, right?
Yeah, there's a feeding frenzy or they don't like you or whatever the case is, but they're actually really nice people. But when they go up there, you got to know your numbers. You got to know them inside and out, everything about your business, and you got to do it, and you have to be confident about it because they'll see right through you.
So they tear you apart if you haven't done your homework.
Absolutely,
right?
Absolutely. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to get something from that because they're one of the entrepreneurs that I interviewed, Danny Nardo from Nardo's Natural Skincare. He brought up a fact that is very interesting, that not only is it a national audience watching you, but there's celebrities who watch the show.
That's true.
And so what happens is that with Danny Nardo, they picked up David Price, who is a Cy Young award-winning baseball pitcher for the Tampa Bay Rays. And he's endorsed their product, and he's working with them. And they almost got Ray Lewis from the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens, but they chose him. Yeah.
Wow. So that's true. I mean, it has a huge national impact. All these things can happen, right?
Absolutely.
Huh.
Yeah.
So what else? Was anything surprised you when you did these interviews?
It surprised me in what way?
There's let's say a story you didn't expect to hear, somebody doing something you didn't expect them to do, or was it all pretty much as you expected, the story to unfold? Well,
there's a lot of surprises. Each entrepreneur's journey was very different how they got on the show. And their experience preparing and what they went through with the sharks are very different. Barbara Lampanelli from Nailpak, she secured a deal with the queen of QVC, Lori Grenier. Has over 350 patents and is huge on QVC.
Wow.
But it took her 3 years to get on that show.
I think I saw them on that same show that I watched. So I guess you have to, it's true. People from QVC will be watching, like all kinds of store outlets, and I guess it is huge, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a phenomenon, and it's going to be even bigger for this coming season, which starts September 20th. We're already looking at getting some more entrepreneurs for the follow-up volume, even though this one's just going to be released tomorrow.
So your book actually shows people how to get on it, like kind of gives them tips and stuff like that?
Absolutely. I've asked each of the entrepreneurs to provide their best tips for how to get on Shark Tank, how to be a successful entrepreneur, and their best Shark Tank experiences. On top of that, there's the written word, the written interviews.
Now let's talk about this as a multimedia book. What does that mean exactly?
Oh, it means, first and foremost, it's going to be available in an app. That's the book.
Oh.
So you download it, you purchase the app for $6.99 on for your Mac or your iPads or your Android systems.
Android, yeah.
Now we're going to come up with a PDF version a little later for those that are familiar or more comfortable with downloading on your computer.
Right.
But we feel that mobile apps and apps are the big thing.
That's an amazing thing. So that's a great idea, actually.
Yeah, when I was at the airport recently, waiting for my flight, everybody was on their smartphones, on their tablets. I counted 5 people who had books, magazines, or newspapers out of everybody.
5 in the whole terminal.
Yes, it's where I was sitting. I did a small survey, but this is the world we live in now. Not to say that books. I hope books never go away.
I don't think they will.
Yeah.
But certainly, it's a brave new digital world for sure. Yeah. So releasing a book on an app is kind of a new thing, isn't it? I mean, I know you can really. I mean, I know you can get a book on Kindle and different digital platforms and everything, but I'm not used to like going to the App Store for the book.
Yeah, well, it's an app-driven world. If you go on your tablets and your smartphones and your iPhones, what do you see on them?
Yeah.
That's how we get our information.
Right.
And I wanted to do that because I wanted to make it affordable for everybody. You had asked me a question earlier. What do you want to do with this? Well, for the price of a venti mocha and a donut, $6.99.
Yeah.
You're going to get information that's life-changing, and you're going to have the ability to take it with you wherever you want, access it however you want to access it. You could be around the park with your iPod. You could listen if you're at home, and you have your iPads or your tablets. You can watch the video interviews there. You can listen to them. You can read them.
That's what we do. Yeah. So, did you have a background as an entrepreneur?
Well, I guess I grew into that. I've been in media for a number of years, and it naturally evolved to that. I've always been into ideas and creating things, and this is the point I'm at now. I based this book. I'm not a writer, even though I did write to the chapters in the book, but I'm a talk show host. I love interviewing people like yourself. It's my passion and my calling, and that's how I based this book around my strengths.
Yeah, interesting idea. And by the way, you mentioned this earlier. What is post-traumatic Shark Tank syndrome?
That was Dan Holtz. Yeah. After he got reamed by the sharks, him and his wife couldn't watch any more episodes for a while. And Billy Blanks Jr. said that, him and his wife Sharon Catherine, that when they saw their episode, they couldn't watch it anymore.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this. Because I did celebrity interviews for many years.
Okay.
So there was this one celebrity, there was a show that I absolutely loved. It was my favorite show. And then I interviewed one of the stars of that show. And generally in my career, people were pretty nice to me. But this one woman who was supposed to be a very celestial person really tore into me and had me in tears, which had never happened before. She got pretty vicious. I could never watch that show again, even though it was my favorite show. So, yeah.
It can be overwhelming, can't it?
It can, yeah. So do you remember any of the tips, like if someone's watching now who has a small business and, may not ever, try to be on Shark Tank, but from the information you've gathered, what would be just a couple of quick tips is there anything that sticks in your mind that you could throw out to some of the business people?
Yeah, absolutely. Take immediate action. If you have an idea, act on it right away. Don't wait.
Wow.
And even if you don't have any money or you don't have a lot of contacts, you take the action because now you have technology around you that you can access any bits of information or get in contact with anybody that you want. There's no excuse for that, yeah.
You're right. That's a great one. That's a wonderful one. Anything else?
The other one is never give up. Most of the time you're going to be up against in situations to where your back is going to be up against the wall. And you just have to focus and concentrate on what you're doing in the moment and not worry about what might happen. Just focus on everything that you can in the moment and do the best job that you can in that moment.
Stay in the eternal now.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Or I like to say the ecstatic now.
The ecstatic now, yeah.
That's wonderful advice. So how can people get in touch with you?
Go to my website, Shark Tank Effect. That's EFFECT.com. All my contact information is on there. You'll see video clips of the interviews with the entrepreneurs on the website. Steve Kaplan is my mentor for this book. He was featured on an hour-long segment of ABC TV's Secret Millionaire Show. And he's been mentoring me. He loves the concept of the new digital publishing. He's behind me all the way, and he's made himself available, and he's going to help me promote this book.
Oh, that's
because he
great.
believes in it. And so you'll see everything on there. You can read a sample chapter, a bridge chapter on the website.
Say the website again.
SharkTankEffect.com.
Okay. And you spell your name Rey,
Yeah.
right? YBARRA.
Yes, correct. Yeah, and you can find me all over social media: Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. I believe I'm a big believer in social media. You had a great guest on here earlier. I was great information. I've been on a pre-Shark Tank Effect tour for 10 months now.
Oh, wow.
So social media, harness it, learn it, because you can leverage yourself incredibly on that.
It is what's happening. There's no way to avoid it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody has moved to cyberspace, as I always say.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Well, it's an honor to be here. Thank you so much.
So stay tuned, because our next guest says that there are 7 types of men most likely to get into dangerous relationships. And he says that also that the father gap is a wound that won't heal, and it's at the root of why some men get into emotional trouble. And he's the author of The Sacred Path, The Way of the Spiritual Warrior, Journey of Mindful Manhood. And one of the things he talks about, by the way, is chivalry. I want to know more about that. So stay tuned. This is the Book Beat on LA Talk Live.
Hey everyone, this is Richard Carr, Business Relations Manager for LA Talk Live. Did you know social media produces almost double the marketing leads of trade shows, telemarketing, direct mail, or even pay-per-click ads? And that about 46% of all online users count on social media when making that ever-important purchase decision. Hey, if you feel lost when it comes to social media, Top Tier Media can help you. Top Tier Media specializes in social media management and blogger outreach for beauty, fashion, health, and lifestyle brands. To learn more, go to www.toptiermedia.com. That's www.toptiermedia.com. Top Tier Media, the official social media marketing company of LA Talk Live and the Talk Live Broadcast Network.
Hello, I'm Joel Ramirez
And I'm Lolita Robinson Coppage, and welcome to Joy in My House
on LATalkLive.com. Inspirational radio
with a touch of recovery.
a reality show where nothing is left unsaid,
And no one is insignificant who says it.
exclusively on LATalkLive.com. You can also catch us on iTunes Radio R&B or watch us on Ustream TV.
Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, and welcome back to the Book Beat. I'm Jean Noel Bassior, and I'm here with Stephen J. Johnson, a PhD who's been in private practice as a consultant and psychotherapist for over 40 years. And he's the founder and director of the Men's Center of Los Angeles. I didn't know there was a Men's Center in Los Angeles, which was formed in 1988. And he is the creator of the Sacred Path Men's Retreat and Call to Adventure Rites of Passage Retreat for fathers and sons, boys and mentors. And Dr. Johnson stands in the forefront of the developing field of male psychology and gender dynamics. And he's written The Sacred Path, The Way of the Spiritual Warrior, Journey to Mindful Manhood. And this is based on his years of running workshop retreats for men, as well as working with both men and women in his private practice. So welcome to the Book Beat.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, years ago I interviewed Sam Keen, and of course that was, a very interesting experience.
Yeah.
And I looked at him, he's one of the founders of the men's movement. And then, now it seemed to me, probably because I was not connected, but that the men's movement kind of dropped off the radar after a surge, right?
Yes, it did.
When did it start? In the 80s, 70s?
It started in the 80s, and the interesting thing about Sam's book, Fire in the Belly, it was one of two books, Iron John by Robert Bly and Sam's book, that actually did very well through the traditional publishing arena. Then Warren Farrell's book, The Myth of Masculine Power, which he got a big advance for, did not do well. The men's movement started to actually, because the media, actually started doing parodies of men. Men are very sensitive to shame. And so the men that were involved in the movement amongst men actually, sort of jumped ship and, went back to their caves.
That's interesting because, the same thing happened to the women's movement. In mainstream media, the women were often depicted as being like overly aggressive, overly masculine, women who were fighting for women's rights back then. And I didn't realize, I guess the same thing happened to men.
Well, the women's movement had a political, women were fighting for equal rights in a certain way. They always, the men's movement was not political. The men's movement was actually, Robert Bly realized that men of my generation, baby boomers, that were born at the end of the war. Yes, our fathers were the greatest generation, but they were also the silent generation. They didn't talk to us when they came home. Our moms were the ones that talked with us. So we were a generation of fellas that had been around women. I was actually very surprised at the very first workshop that I did up in Topanga Canyon in the mid 80s. I had 45 men together. All of them said that they were less comfortable in the presence of men and more comfortable in the presence of women. So when the bottom fell out of the men's movement because, of the parodies about men going off and talking with other men, they were saying, well, they were going off and, dancing naked around the fire and drumming and all sorts.
As if it was an unnatural thing to do. Like, how dare a man just have some kind of intimacy with another man that's not, sexual or whatever, or that it
goes back through history. Men would gather and sit around the fire. They would tell stories. They would tell their own stories. And men needed to do that. Men need to talk and they need to be heard.
Yeah, that need has never gone away. What has happened? Is the men's movement gone underground, or would you say it's having a resurgence now, or what's happening?
I think it's quiet. Robert Bly said, "You fellas that are doing grassroots work, keep doing it in your communities. Keep working with the men. The men need it." So in 1987, when I did my first workshop, and I saw that men were really, they needed that work, and I continued to do that, hold a workshop for men every couple of months. And then in 88, I founded the Men's Center of Los Angeles. That's a community now that over 26 years has saved many men, many marriages. It's helped the women in the lives of the men, and certainly many men have, that have faced trouble, because men tend to get in trouble at some time or times in their life. It's helped them to get through trouble and find their way on the journey to mindful manhood.
Yeah, and what is mindful manhood? As that's your term that you came up with, right? Can you tell us about what that means?
Yeah. Well, mindfulness, Jon Kabat-Zinn was the one that took the cognitive behavioral approach and merged it with Eastern sort of Buddhist or Zen practices, and said that mindfulness is essentially when one is present, fully present in the moment, in a relaxed way of being, controlling their mind in such a way that they're exercising discernment, exercising judgment, not as in condemnation, but judgment as in wise discernment. So it's a state of mind, essentially. It's a expanded consciousness and awareness.
And as a man grows up, and of course women too, but focusing on men for the moment, that would seem to me to be an essential quality of not just masculinity, but humanhood for everybody.
Yeah.
But men, in a way, seem to be taught an opposite behavior, like to be a man. It's kind of the opposite of that.
There are the masks of false masculinity that men tend to wear. Men will be lone wolves. It's very typical for a fella to say, why don't you come to one of our retreats? No, I'm not a group guy. I'm a lone wolf. And I said, well, wolves travel in packs. And I said, what do you think it would be like to be around a lot of non-group guys who are lone wolves? And they say, well, I don't know. I say, it's fascinating because you guys are very much alike, and you're actually going to enjoy being around other men just like you.
Wow. What are some of the other masks that men wear?
Well, there is the impinged man, and that's the fella that basically has never individuated from his mother and feels much more comfortable always around women than with men. There's the cursed man. That's a man who never got a blessing from his father, and even worse, was cursed by his father. I talk about the father wound. Robert Bly talked about the father wound. The father gap is very real. I mean, we experienced it, men of my generation, but across this country, 1/3 of children will go to bed tonight without a father, a biological father in the next room. That's upwards of 20 million children. 40% of those children, for instance, will not have seen their father in at least a year.
So what is happening? Is it that men just are not wanting that commitment, or is it that fatherhood seems not worth the time, or what is going on with that?
Well, it's relationship oriented. It's very challenging to be in relationship. It's a lot of work. And I think that men, if they don't have the modeling of a father to show them how to go the distance in a relationship and deal with the dynamics and the various kinds of challenges, then they tend to not stay in relationship, and they'll leave relationships. They'll go off. They want to, have a do-over, and so maybe they'll find another woman. She may be several years younger. They'll start another family, and perhaps they leave their children behind.
Now, when you see men like this, do you think that they're obviously not happy with this? Are they? I mean,
I refer to it as the secret longing that men have. There's a hidden depression. There's a covert depression that men have. It doesn't show up in the way that depression does typically with women, because men they'll mask it through alcohol use, or alcoholism, drug abuse, gambling, sex, addiction, things of that nature.
Outer things.
Acting
activities.
out, to keep themselves going rather than to go down and out. But it's so typical for men, to find their way into trouble, because the interesting thing about it is the process of getting out of trouble is what allows a man to change. Women don't need necessarily to get into trouble to change. They tend to flow and they tend to change. Men often will need a crisis, a meltdown, as an opportunity to move beyond a place where they're stuck into another place in their life.
Because they hold it in, don't ask for help. Women tend to keep some communication going usually.
Exactly. Women are relational.
Yeah.
And men are transactional. Men will talk to exchange, information. Women will talk because they enjoy the process of communicating. It's just more difficult for men.
Well, of course, now people are kind of connecting the dots with so many gangs, no fathers around.
Right.
And yet it seems like, the gang is taking the place of the father, right?
You can have 4 or 5 generations in a gang. Wounded boys that grow up without a father tend to grow up to be wounding men. Gangs feed on fatherless boys. And many of the fellas that we work with, and we do bring African American boys and men into our retreats on full scholarship, men that are transforming their lives and boys that are disavowing the gang, that want to get through high school, get into college, and we've helped many of them do exactly that.
Talk about chivalry. What does that mean?
Well, I think the culture these days lacks the manners and the social graces, the mores, the morals, and the standards that we were accustomed to in yonder years, certainly when I was younger. And I've found that men and women always seem to be very interested and sort of enchanted with the notion of Camelot, with the notion of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And when I talk with men about this, as being rising up to be spiritual warriors and mindful men, they resonate with that. And so we talk about self-discipline, positive intentionality, honor, valor, compassion, and joy, and how to find more joy in your life through being a man of integrity.
Well, these are things that I imagine it's hard for men to find a place where they can talk about these things, right? Because they're not going to go out for a beer and probably talk about that, right?
So many men can't really talk about it with their closest friends. You know, it just feels too strange and too awkward. But in a community, on the retreats, in the workshops, in the seminars, it's a safe place for men to bare their souls and to talk about things perhaps that they've never talked about before.
So on these retreats, like let's say you have men together who have never talked about these things, what happens? Like, does this seem like to them? Are they relieved? Is it a good feeling, or is it a strange feeling for many, or do they get angry because they realize what they've been missing? Or
all of the above.
Really?
Yeah. But you know, men can come and they can get so much out of the work that we do, out of reading my book, you know, because it spans the generations from adolescence all the way up into and through the 70s and the 80s. But men can come to a retreat and they can sit and listen, and they can get value from hearing someone of different generations. We have men that come and they fill in every decade from adolescence up into and through the 70s.
You know, that's really interesting because I know you talk about aging, elderhood, and completion. That's one of your chapters in the book.
Exactly.
And, you know, the concept of the wise man, the wise older man. I mean, we look around, we don't see that that stereotype.
Especially in America, I think. We, you know, we don't really prize and see that that our elders, you know, have tremendous value. And in fact, I always say, don't just be an older. Be an elder, because an elder knows that he has something to give back to others. And admire a younger fella. Robert Moore, the Jungian analyst, would say, you fellas know that there are young men out there that need to be admired. Look into their eyes, look into their souls, find something, open the vision. That's why I say mentoring is so important. Whether you've had a good relationship with your father or not, a mentor is different than a father. A father puts a roof over their children's head and is supposed to be a good provider and do all of the things that a father is supposed to do. And a mentor looks into the eyes of a protege and sees a vision and opens the world and helps him to cut the strings of attachment from his parents and go off and create a destiny and leave a legacy that he'll be proud of.
And so opposite to what a gang does in terms of cutting the strings from, say, the mother or what, and replacing that allegiance. So
it's a different rites of passage. It's through it's aggression and violence and acting out in a way, again, false masculinity. You know, of being, you know, the kind of man that one would say, oh, well, you know, he's tough and therefore, you know, he's macho, he's a man. You know.
And so your book takes readers on this sacred path to mindful manhood, sort of? Is that?
There are 3 sections to the book. The first is the spiritual warrior's journey. It starts off with some of the trouble that men can get into. And why men tend to get into trouble, and how men can get through it and get out of trouble by having a community of men in their lives and having an understanding of the direction and the path that they need to move through. The second section is a return to chivalry, and that is what we've talked about. The third is a call to action, which is spiritual warriors in the world. It's the work that we need to do more of in the world. There is so much on a daily basis that we have to contend with, even today, of course. You know, you turn on the news, every day there's something else that is heartbreaking. We need more spiritual warriors, more people to stand up and to be accountable and to rise to the challenge to do things that can be of help to this world.
And what drew you to this? Why did you get into this?
To working with men? Well, you know, when I started as a therapist in the 60s, most of our patients, our clients were women, and men were kind of headed either, you know, over to Vietnam or maybe off to the hills, but they certainly weren't plumbing the depths of their souls. What I found is that most therapists were women. 84% of therapists were women. It's even more than that now. It's up in the 90s. And that men need to be in the presence of other men. And so I decided to create the center and start training interns, male therapists, to work with men. And also in midlife, around the age of 38, where I was in my own midlife crisis, I heard the words inside that said, the sacred path, the way of the spiritual warrior.
Wow.
And I wondered, what did that mean? And then I heard, bring good men together and bring out the best in them. And then I heard, and when they're healed, they'll want to give back. And those were my marching orders.
You were listening to your inner being.
That was my revelation.
Yeah.
And what it did is it took me, it changed my direction away from potential trouble in my own life to being part of the solution. And in my work with men, we're all brothers, on that path. And we mutually mentor each other. We hold each other's feet to the fire, and we're each other's accountability partners. Women get so much value from the work that men do. They are great proponents of the work.
Yes, and of course, the women, myself and the ones I know, are so happy about the men's movement, But the thing that fascinates me is that you stuck with it, because it went underground. You didn't hear about it, and you don't realize that there's people like you that are kind of keeping the fire burning.
Well, you know how you can tell who your true friends are, when the chips are down? Those people that jumped on the bandwagon when they thought it was going to take off and it was going to do great things for them to be working with men. When the bottom fell out, they jumped off the bandwagon just as quickly. Yeah. Those of us that are in the world that value men's work, we're all connected at a very deep level. I can meet somebody that I've never met face to face before who's working somewhere with men in community, and immediately there's a kinship there.
Like soul brothers.
Like soul brothers, exactly. And we who were involved in the early days, we were involved with women in the work that women were doing, in the early days.
Yeah.
And so we had that foundation as well of working with the leaders that were trying to help women.
Because we're all human beings.
Absolutely.
And I think that whether it's through the women's movement or the men's movement or the transgender movement,
exactly.
If you touch who you are, it might be the same thing.
Exactly.
What a concept.
I know. And that's the brilliant thing, is when men come together of all walks of life, ethnicities, orientations, and, et cetera, they get that message. They realize that. And then if they carry it out into the world, it broadens.
And that must be wonderful when you see that awakening.
I do. Yeah, it is.
Thank you so much. How
can
people get in touch with you?
Well, my website is Dr. Stephen Johnson. That's DrStephen Johnson.com, or sacredpathpress.com.
And the book is on Amazon.
The book is on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. It's also an ebook.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you to Susan Levin for coming up with these wonderful guests. It's just amazing how she produces this show. I'm constantly amazed. Thank you, Susan. We'll see you next week, same time, same station, for the Book Beat. And here's your homework. This week, find a good book. If you can't find one, start writing the one you want to read yourself. We'll see you here on the Book Beat. And all of these shows are archived here at LA Talk Live, where we are more than just talk.
More than just talk. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned.
Brooksy, maker of fine laptop apparel, laptop covers and sleeves, iPhone covers, and unique home decor. Broxy laptop sleeves are made to order and can be custom made to fit your computer. Just send a message with your order telling us the model and the dimensions of your laptop, and we'll make you your very own sleeve in whichever design you choose. Any of the pillow designs can be turned into laptop sleeves too. Remember, Broxy for all your computer embellishment needs. You can find Broxy at www.broxy.com. That's BROKESY.com. And remember to tell them that you heard it here on LA Talk Live. We are more than just talk.
Okra Group Personal Chefs, proud sponsors of Let's Do Lunch with Chef Richard Petty. Okra Group Personal Chefs have been providing quality gourmet culinary services to distinctive homes since 2004. For a free evaluation of dietary needs, call 818-850-9584. That's 818-850-9584. We will design a custom menu that fits your needs. So call us today, Okra Group Personal Chefs. Let us personally make you a dish.
Hi, this is Dr. Levi, your fitness doctor, making a personal house call, inviting you to join me Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific for my all-new show, The Dr. Levi Show. Join us as we discuss fitness, health, and well-being, including emotional and spiritual health. So don't forget to tune in to The Dr. Levi Show every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, exclusively on latalklive.com and the Talk Live Broadcast Network. You can also catch us on iTunes, Radio R&B, or watch us on Ustream.tv, or catch us on the Live 365 network, and now on Radio Flag and Stitcher Radio. Reality radio handcrafted for your listening pleasure. This is LA Talk Live, and we are more than just talk.
Hi, this is Starlet Quarles, and I'm inviting you to join us every Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. for a new show right here on LA Talk Live, The Dialogue, Real Talk, Real People. Join us as